and I'll be starting off by looking at the education system of Norway today, and I'll be focusing in on what Norway is currently projecting as the future of work versus what they might need to be considering as the future of work. It's quite a dichotomy between what they think is the future versus what the future actually holds. And that has to be addressed first in order for the future of work to make any sense at all. Just the slideshow. So that's the, thank you. Moving on, I've worked in the EdTech space for 8 years. I've worked with companies like Innovation Norway, Microsoft, and a lot of scale-up companies. We've done cutting-edge research on what the skill requirements are. We've mapped out and also utilized 14,700 skills in order to understand what are the current skills that are actually required in society today. And if you don't know those skill sets, it's very hard to project the future. And currently the education system doesn't have any of these skill sets mapped out, and they more or less have a higher level overview where you just have certain categories like engineering or doctor. But this understanding has to change. It has to change for a very good reason. And one of the things that Inge Strømke recently highlighted when she was asked just last week, what is Norway's future in terms of AI? Can we be a leader in it? She said, absolutely no. There's no way, because we have to work on our infrastructure before we have any chance of considering us leading. I think that was a little bit. So what does infrastructure mean? And I think there's a very big confusion when it comes to what infrastructure is in today. Because when she says we have to work on it, we have to understand how does building infrastructure like this, which Inge Strømke says, correlate to this, which is what our education system in Norway posted today. They said, on LinkedIn today, they said, this is the future. And they showed all the study places and all the students that are going to fill up those study places. They said, this is the future of the workforce. Can anyone raise their hand if you think this is the future of the workforce? But this is the problem, because most of the support will come from these institutions to guide the future of the workforce. A lot of funding is being put so that we're developing these skill sets, but it doesn't reflect the reality. And if we look at the problems that Norway has today, the major problems, how is that going to be reflected here? So we have bad architecture in many different places, really poor. And this is a really easy problem to fix nowadays. You don't have to have that. We also have a catastrophe with food prices because of inflation and all that stuff. This is also a really easy problem to fix in today's technology. People asking on Reddit, where are cheap meals? And they're also saying I'm not expecting to get any nutrition, I'm just hungry. How can anyone afford to live here? Another problem that can be very easily solved with technology. If we looked at 3D printing and we seriously researched how to make that commercially available for residents and to create houses, that would be an excellent way to solve this problem with technology. And then there's, of course, the healthcare system. And then we advertise the healthcare system as really great, but there's so much room for improvement. And people all over Reddit are describing their experiences. They have to be in line, they have to take the risk of not receiving the best treatment. They're unsure if it's actually going to be solved, what they have. So how is the education system mapping the biggest problems of Norway and then using that to understand what should we actually educate people with? And that divide is not there. And one of the biggest problems that's totally overlooked is social media. People have, especially in the education system, very, very little clue how much data of culture, how much data of raw resources, how much is actually being sent to other countries that is not Norway. It is honestly shocking and scary. And if you looked at the debate at Arendalsuke about this, one of the leading professors, Goodwin, described that this kind of mindset, not having your own infrastructure when it comes to social media, where all the country's culture is the mindset of a developing country. Because you give away your resources and you pay people as well. You don't get anything back. The ultimate benefit goes to other countries, not the country that is just providing data. And of course you get likes and all that stuff, but how beneficial is that when agents will be created based on your data by other companies if they want, because they're training on them? It doesn't make any sense. So we have to remap the future of work based on needs. What is the needs of society, and what jobs should we create thereafter? And that's such a huge misunderstanding, doesn't make any sense to me. And you can categorize jobs based on what needs they provide. So this is just an example of, as you move up Maslow's pyramid, you can focus on higher level needs for humans and work your way up so that the idea of what a job is has to actually be defined based on what meaning is. You can't have a job without understanding what the meaning of life is, or how to even approach the meaning of life. Because a job is about providing meaning to people, whether it's food so that people can survive, whether it's knowledge, whether it's better services for healthcare. All those things are related to fulfilling one's needs. And the easiest way to understand and simplify the meaning of life, so you don't get too philosophical, is simply to understand what are needs and how do you meet the needs. So that's a hugely overlooked factor. So as the future of work could just be easily described as an arrow shooting upward, because the more and more complex the jobs are, the more they can meet higher level needs, like self-actualization, which is reaching one's full potential. So education, all these other factors can help you get there, but you really have to understand that a job should be classified based on this, and not superficial things, like social class and all that stuff. Like that's really not the most important thing. And by defining it like this, leaders in the public sector and the private sector can focus on actually providing value to people, as opposed to just winning the competition, which is essentially pointless. So some of the biggest job opportunities in the future will be personalized medicine. And without infrastructure in Norway, we can't get there. We have to actually have legal frameworks to share our data. We don't have that right now. So it's impossible for startups or researchers to get access to healthcare data, which makes us actually be blocked in terms of progress. But if we look at this from a needs perspective, we can see that if we have personalized medicine, we don't have cancer is not a problem anymore, so we can live a lot longer and we can meet so many more needs in terms of healthcare. We also have bioengineering, so we can print out organs and we don't have to worry about dying from conventional means. That's totally 1900s. In the 21st century, you just 3D print a heart or any organ that you need, and it's personalized to you. And there's no reason why that's an odd idea if you look at the progress of technology. It's really just part of evolution. And then you also have agriculture and farms. People can actually have food at the most minimal costs. Vertical farming can be part of it. That means that everyone can get access to nutritious food that's optimized for survivability and costs. Like, it could be literally free if this was optimized. And then of course you have neural nanobots, which are in the brain. They will power your brain to unimaginable cognitive abilities. This is already being worked on places like Stanford. This is just a matter of time. But then if we look at it, how does that actually meet the needs of humanity? You get somewhat of a different answer, because you can see that this is not really shocking at all. This is just a natural progression of humanity. This is an evolution. And this will enable humanity to keep up with AI, because we'll be able to actually have the bandwidth capacity to communicate with a greater being than what humans are normally considered to be able to communicate with. So when we look at the future of work, we have to look at meeting higher level needs in order to survive as a species. Otherwise, a lot of bad things can happen, and the alignment problem in itself, the famous alignment problem in AI, can be solved if you look at meeting the needs of humans as opposed to just building things that will make you rich. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any question to Magnus?
Yeah, excuse me. Why don't you have brought a robot on the stage today to talk to the robot?
Yep.
Why didn't you bring the robot?
Why would I bring a robot?
Because it's what you're talking about.
How am I talking about robots?
Yeah, you said it yourself, that to keep up with the AI,
Yep.
we have to go in this direction to keep up with the AI. So why don't you have
We have robots. My name is Kai Ingressen. I'm a serial entrepreneur.
Yep.
We have robots coming into the market already with Elon Musk's what you call it? Humanoids.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because you talk about Neuralink, or the stuff that Neuralink is doing, and we have to go in that direction to compete with AI.
Yeah.
Why didn't you bring in a robot here to show us what's going on, really? You're talking about, because this is going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of robots. They're gonna be in the thousands and the millions.
In Ukraine, they're using military dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah, to defend themselves, running around with weapons, etc. Already, it's now happening now.
Yeah, that's true. There's so much. The future work is huge. Robots are a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely.
You spoke about the architecture of the Norwegian workforce not being in a position to kind of be a primary player in the AI or in the machine learning space.
Yeah.
Do you think it's remotely possible for, I mean, we're a small country. Yeah, we have money, but we're still a small country. But we have good talent, but not at the global size. Do you think it's possible, even with a good workforce and distribution of machine learning engineers and tech, do you think it's possible for Norway to be a primary player in that space? Do you think it's possible for us to be able to even compete with NVIDIA or Neuralink or any of the other AI companies?
Not at the current rate. With the current rate, we're becoming a developing country because we're giving away our data for free. Startups are doing this. Big businesses are doing this without really understanding what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years. I've interviewed 400 companies in Norway. There's very little understanding of strategic gameplay in business. So people don't have the context, they lack awareness, and they lack a holistic strategy. They're isolated in terms of silos in the public sector. They don't communicate with each other enough, they don't share data. It's like
we're dividing ourselves so poorly that it's going to take, as Inge Strømke says, Professor Bea from NTNU, it's going to take a long time for Norway to get there because the infrastructure is not being built. And that also means we have to question who's actually leading the public sector. Are they qualified to do this? Can they lead Norway in the right direction? Nobody's assessing actually the skill sets of the major leaders throughout the public sector of Norway. It's a big problem. How are they actually being hired? This is being done in an old-fashioned way. So there's so many like infrastructure problems that have to be addressed for Norway to even get to the point of NVIDIA. We've been talking about the fortune tax all over LinkedIn, affecting startups negatively. There's so little change happening because the skill sets aren't there. In the government right now, there's so many new skill sets coming out, like UX, for example, where it wouldn't be the job of entrepreneurs to tell the government, they would actually interview you and figure out the pain points. So until those changes are done, there's just no way that we'll have the infrastructure to compete fast enough.
Yeah, definitely. Even if we do fix the infrastructure of Norway to be able to kind of progress further, even with our small workforce, I don't see a possibility for us to compete. Do you have any ideas on the actions that we need to take as a country in order to progress fast enough to be able to compete?
That's a great point. So leapfrogging is something that other developing countries have done. As Norway's approaching the transition between a developing country or being a progressive country, we have to consider things that are revolutionary, coming out, holistic strategies, proven to work, like skills-based hiring. So we don't have a cohesive strategy, and we don't hire people based on what our needs are. If we did that, it would really leapfrog all the industries, and it would make sure that leadership is held accountable for meeting goals, criteria, needs. If you think about, there's no like actual transparency or accountability. What was accomplished in the education industry this year, or in the public sector? What was actually accomplished? Very hard to know. You know, there's no like easy to understand assessment mechanism. So that would help leapfrog it and make it better for all startups and also public sector innovation in general.
Thank you.
Sure.
The last question.
Hi, my name is Barbara. I'm a lawyer. I was wondering, you talked about we need to change legislation to get more information about health in persons, living souls in this country. So, how have you considered the downsides, and what about privacy protection, and what about those people who really wants to keep their health information private? What are your evaluations when it comes to those questions?
That's a great point, and this has been talked about by the creator of the internet, Tim Berners-Lee. He's suggested about 10 years ago that we should move to decentralized systems for this very reason, meaning that you would have control of your own data in a server that you own, as opposed to just having it centralized where someone else owns it and kind of guards it or whatever. Because if you own your data, then you control who you give it to, and you know, lawyers will be evolving into understanding smart contracts, how to develop smart contracts, which is essentially automating the job of a lawyer, what a lawyer does. Because
So I'm gonna be unemployed.
well, you have two options. You can either learn the future skill sets.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's interesting. But so if you have it like your own bank to protect your own information, so it's voluntarily then. So it's up to every individual if they want to share it or not.
It kind of goes into understanding what decentralized systems do and mean, because that's a different paradigm shift of understanding how to store one's data, and the answer lies in understanding what decentralized is.
What are we going to do about all the unemployed people around then, including me?
Well, there has to be a national workforce transition upskilling program, because 44% of all skills, according to the World Economic Forum, are going to be drastically changed by 2027, which is very soon. They said this back in 2023. The OECD has told Norway many years to create an upskilling program for this very reason. The government has not listened, and they don't see that or understand the point of this. They assume these changes are going to come in 2035, even though it's very contradictory to what's happening around us right now. So we need to have an upskilling program.
What does that mean, upscaling program? I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Identify which skills are going to be automated, and identify which skills are going to still be useful, and then train people based on what's going to be useful.
What do you think about doing with the useless people then?
Well, society has not been kind to those that aren't useful, and if you look at history, it's not talked about a lot, but they're just thrown aside. Evolution isn't kind, so.
Thank you for being so honest. I have a last question.